Yes, ma'am. All right. Today's topic, we've reached the end of the Diddler's trial. I haven't done an update for the last 3-4 weeks of the trial. It's been very interesting. I think actually the defense has done as good of a job as they can at discrediting some of the witnesses. They've managed to catch some of them in lies. They've managed to poke holes in some ideas and some theories. And it's definitely given quite a lot of people watching some ideas. Why was this witness put up? Were they really credible? A lot of people have different opinions. Personally, me watching a lot of the testimony unfold and following with it every day, there's definitely been some up and downs for the prosecution, mistakes that they've made that they've been caught in. But now we're reaching this point. There's questions about whether or not they're guilty or not. Whether I think he's guilty on the 5 counts or not is kind of irrelevant because the 12 jurors are going to decide. And it only takes one juror to say, I don't want to charge him, for him to get off. That's all it takes, right? It has to be a unanimous decision when it comes to finding him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. There are 5 charges, 2 for trafficking, 1 for Jane, 1 for Cassie, 1 RICO, and then 2 Mann Act, which is the transportation of prostitution across state lines. With that in mind, I want to kind of go over the closing arguments, kind of give a chance for both of the sides to give what they want to say so you can hear theory is as they're presenting it to the jury and whether or not it's convincing. So first off, we have Christy Slavik on behalf of the prosecution against Diddy. And one of the first messages reads, the defendant was the head of the Combs enterprise. There was an inner circle, his chief of staff, his bodyguards, the names changed, but the roles remained the same. You've heard about KK, Combs' right brain. She lived in 2-star. Some people think that racketeering is just for the mafia or for street gangs, but it's not the truth. So let's say you run a real business. You sell cake, all right? Every day, people come for cupcakes. But you also tell your employees to go get drugs for you, for them to go get women for you, for them to go get tools for you to commit crimes, then they can charge you with RICO. Brendan Paul, who's an employee of Diddy, said he made $100K a year. KK, one of the co-conspirators, made 6 times that. When your boss asks you to buy drugs, you're committing a crime. When you kidnap someone or lock his girlfriend in a hotel room after your boss stomped on her face, it's a crime. The law does not require us to know that they like committing these crimes. You saw KK chiding the defendant to not be so reckless, but she got him cash. Drugs. She was a member of the enterprise. It impacted interstate commerce. Minimal is fine. Combs knowingly became a member. He was the boss. He was the through line. The racketeering acts, you got distribution of drugs, kidnapping, arson, bribery, facilitating of trafficking. You only need to find that someone would commit 2 acts in any of these categories. It could be 2 acts of drug distribution. It could be 1 kidnapping. It's just 2. Christy Slavik, the most involved were D-Rock, KK, and Fahim, but others helped keep the drug supply. We are not talking about marijuana or what Brendan Paul calls hard drugs. There are stipulations of the drugs found in the searches. If you don't remember, Diddy was caught with drugs in the hotel when he was arrested. And then some of his employees were on jets flying across, arrested also with drugs. So they do have hard evidence of them traveling with these drugs and them having it. Quantities are not relevant. It's not an element of this crime. Distribution does not require sale. So people are saying, well, this is not distribution. And that's also what the defense says. This is for personal use. If you use your employees to get drugs for you, distribution just means that you hand it out to other people. People think that distribution means you're running some kind of drug front where you're selling. It has nothing to do with that. Distribution is just what the word means. You distribute it to others. People imagine that things like trafficking always have to be for financial gain or something like that. Even if it's for your own pleasure. If you traffic a young woman and then you get her to sleep with other people, also you can enjoy and watch it, it's still trafficking even if nobody pays you. What the prosecution was able to find is that through the text messages, as they read through all the employees had different code names for different types of drugs. And they would coordinate between each other to get the money to get the kind of drugs that Diddy needed for whatever it was for these freak-offs. They're also on camera in the videos that they filmed in the freak-offs consuming some of these drugs. So you have the distribution element right there. You also have the escorts who came to spend time with Diddy and the lady, admitting to the fact that they did the drugs that Diddy distributed. There's really, for me personally, just listening to this part, not much wiggle room.
Yeah.
Cassie used drugs at every freak-off supplied by the defendant. He introduced Jane to drugs, gave them to her. He gave drugs to Kerry Morgan, to Banna Bonolan. He made Brendan Paul try Tusi to see if it was good. D-Rock would text one stop, need to see someone for bro. That is the defendant. Guido asked for him to cover the defendant's drug debt. KK knew he was distributing drugs to the women for the Wild King Nights. Jane told KK was having a bad come down. KK, who's the co-conspirator, gives pro tips on how to deal with it. Plain and simple, that is drug distribution. So his employees were telling the women he was allegedly trafficking how to deal with overdosing or, basically the after effects.
Bad trip.
Exactly. How about kidnapping? They committed them both under California and New York law. Consider Cassie. He stomped on her face. She was disfigured. Roger Bonds, which is Diddy's security, caught her and brought her back. The defendant made her go to the London hotel on Sunset so no one saw her. She wanted to go home to her mom, but no, she was not allowed. That is kidnapping. And I think as far as the defense goes, they did a good job of saying there's not enough proof for this. You can't prove it's the defendant. For example, the arson aspect. It's like, well, people were like, well, no one caught him on camera doing it. Nobody said that. And the defense team did a good enough job to say, I can't definitively say beyond a reasonable doubt that Diddy is guilty of the arson. So that's where they get a win. But you have to remember, when this is for RICO, they have such a long list of crimes that they're alleging Diddy did. And whether or not the arson happened isn't really that important.
No, because you need two. And motherfuckers have 70,000.
At 70,000 drug distribution alone.
It's just like...
The defense, for example, made a good job of saying, like, how are you going to say this is forced labor? So they're trying to say it's forced labor because they forced Cassie or Jane to sleep with the people, or they forced Mia, which is another, to work insane hours for 3 days straight on drugs and stuff like that. But there's just no evidence there. So I think the defense does a good job of knocking out some of these predicate acts and being like, there's no clear sign for this. The problem for me was bribery was a great example. They literally had the dude who got bribed come in. He had to sign a sworn statement. He explains why the tape never came out for so long. It's because they got bribed by Diddy. Diddy showed up, gave him $100K cash. The bodyguards were there. They made him sign an NDA. The bribery is going to be very, very hard to get out of. So that's another predicate act. You only need two, remember. Because you want to hear what their defense is for prostitution?
What?
This guy goes, I'm not paying them for sex. I'm paying them for their time. I'm paying them for their company. And the prosecutor's just like, well, you saw these people so often. How come you only saw them in hotel rooms? And how come some of them testified that if they didn't have sex, they basically received nothing or literally nothing other than the travel fees? In fact, he even called the escort agency to complain. He said, the guy didn't finish, so you're only getting half. What does that tell you?
The time was the time fucking.
Right.
Basically.
And all the escorts who came on and testified said, yeah, I was there for sex. That's all we did. I wanted the whole tune, banged as long as they needed. I got paid more.
We didn't play Uno.
Exactly.
Reverse.
He tried. Again, I don't think there's any reasonable jury who's going to say he's not guilty of that charge.
No.
I think you underestimate. Okay, the jury's actually interesting. It's 8 men and 4 women. They're older. What do you think the problem is there?
There's more men than women.
Wrong. It's the opposite. There's 2 men and women. When it comes to cases that involves sexual crime, women are actually reticent to find men guilty.
Really?
So I've seen conflicting studies on this, but to come back to the Diddy case, apparently like people have been zoning in on one of the jurors, was this like older black woman, and apparently she's loving Diddy. She be loving his lawyer and shit. She be making all kinds of reactions. That could be enough for a mistrial. Just needs one. It just needs one, and it's so funny too because I was watching the.
She's just.
Okay, you're saying that the YNW Melly case. It was a mistrial.
Yeah.
One juror fucked it up. An older black woman. Basically, when they went into there, and she's like, "I don't think he did it. I think this is a setup. I think I watched the case. I watched the evidence. It was live streamed. That motherfucker is guilty. They had a Fitbit because he tried to pretend like somebody came by, did a drive-by and killed his 2 homies. But they did the gun splatter shit and they found out it was just him in the backseat shooting his 2 homies. In fact, they actually had the location of the GPS where it stopped, and because he had an app that tracks your footsteps. So they could track the fact that at the time of the shooting, he got out of the car, walked around, stood there for a few seconds, and then walked back. Why? Because he had to go outside, shoot the car from out to make it look like a drive-by, and then get back in the vehicle. Then another camera came back, and he left with it. So he left the 2 guys dead in the car. That's just the tip of the iceberg, okay? They had this dude dead to rights. The jury was ready to convict. This woman was a holdout. The jury comes back in to like read the verdict, like we can't come to so the judge says, go back inside. Them motherfuckers go in there for 2 more days.
From day one, she says this one woman on the jury had issues with the 4-person selected at one point, crossing her arms and saying she was done. When another juror asked her not to shut down and set her feelings aside, she exploded. When prospective jurors are questioned to decide whether they can be fair and impartial, the woman said she had previous experience with the legal system because of past family issues. She insisted this would not affect her ability to serve as a juror. On the last day of deliberation, the former juror said that while it appeared they were 11-1 to convict demons of manslaughter with a deadly weapon, the woman pulled 2 other jurors aside and spoke to them for a few minutes, convincing them to come to her side.
So it just takes one. Listen, And I think this is one of those cases where that one might be in the cards. So the defense lawyer, he was the opposite of the prosecution.
Okay.
He didn't have no PowerPoint. He was just yapping. He was just, the trial from the evidence, what is it? Is it personal use drugs? That's all it is. That and swingers, a lifestyle. But the prosecution have charged one of the most serious statutes on the books. They called threesomes and drugs RICO. And they found it. Boxes of Astroglide. Take Diddy off the streets. They got the baby oil and the personal use drugs. America's safer. So on the Kid Cudi thing, this is what he says. Yeah, he was there. I'm not saying Sean Combs didn't go there. He wanted to fight Cudi. Motherfucker. Combs is not a coward. He's ready to fight. At the risk of being sexist, they are men. They fight. We're going to have a good old-fashioned 8 a.m. Hollywood Hills John Wayne fight. The Porsche, not a style. There's no evidence. Who else would do it? Not evidence. Burning a car is cowardice. Be a man and fight him. Did the defendant go after Cassie? Absolutely he did. This is after the Cudi incident where she was trying to run away. He's banging on the door, maybe with a hammer. He's banging on the door, maybe with a hammer. Motherfucker, are you? He's just saying shit, bro. So during his, he was just freestyling, and he ended up fucking up. And the judge agrees. So the judge has to make a statement to the jury saying you should not consider some of what he said. It was inappropriate. Now here's the thing. This is actually not a bad move by the defense because
it blurs the jury. You can't unhear what you heard.
You can't unring the bell. That's true. And also, like, the prosecution is not going to ask for mistrial on closing statements, right? So the judge can't do too much. One party says, Brandon Paul said these were personal drugs. He said he forgot to take the cocaine out of my bag. I got the best lawyer in the world and my charges were dismissed. That's what he said. That's what Brandon Paul, Diddy's employee, said. Sean Combs would not sell in drugs, which is true. He wasn't. But that has nothing to do with distribution.
No. But he's trying to play with the words.
He's doing what a defense attorney does. Cassie said he was a drug addict. How was he supposed to get them? Grow his own Xanax? Did he have drugs? Yes. They found it in his house. Was he using his enterprise to distribute drugs? No. You're going to have to think through this. I was like, bro, so you're admitting he had the drugs. You're admitting he was getting them through his employees, but he wasn't distributing them even though.
He was. And evidence shows that he was.
So again.
But at this point, he's just yapping. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he does the same thing. He goes, it's people in creative fields doing what people in creative fields do. So he's talking about the drugs. It's not racketeering. I'm going to talk about Cassie. Can you traffic your girlfriend? Maybe. If you push them into prostitution, but he's not making money from it. So he's trying to blur the line of what trafficking is.
They did a good job about what the definitions were and what the definitions are. And he's trying to do a good job to blur all the lines and up and put some sand in the water just to blur it.
Right. And one thing the prosecution said was, listen, if you don't believe that Cassie was always unwilling, that's okay. You only need to find him guilty of once. If he forced her even one time against her will to engage in these sex acts with these prostitutes, that's trafficking. Now, for a lot of people, that's hard to understand. But to me, it kind of rings true. If you're sleeping with somebody on a pretty regular basis and they say no, and then you beat them into, isn't that not grape? I think we'd all agree. But then the defense comes back and they go, if she liked it 75, can number 76 be sex trafficking? He closes on this line. He goes, America's the greatest because each citizen and the government, there is a trial. That is your house. I'm going to ask you to summon that courage to do the right thing and acquit Sean Combs on all counts. He is not a racketeer. He's innocent. Let him go home to his family. Thank you. And he leaves the stand. During this closing, he definitely made a good job of poking holes in regards to
every time you say
the arson. He did a good job in regards to Jane. Again, they definitely had some high points, and I don't want to take that away from the defense. Now, the prosecution comes on rebuttal, which is shorter, and that's Miss Comey. The defendant did not take no for an answer, certainly not from his girlfriends. He beat them. They suggest he didn't pay for sex, that there was no enterprise, and that the witnesses lied. But he flew sex workers across the country to have sex with Cassie and Jane while he enjoyed himself in the corner. It was not for their conversation. It was for sex. Remember Daniel Phillip? He said he got paid for sex. When he had a performance issue, he stopped getting paid. The Punisher, 500 with no sex, thousands win sex. And the 500 was just for travel. I suspect you'll hear that uncalled witnesses were equally available to both sides. Maybe some of these men would have worked for free. You know, who wouldn't want to have sex in front of the masked master celebrity? but they got paid. The defendant is guilty on count 3 and 5. Mr. Agnifilo said Mr. Combs is just a fist guy. Sure, when it is his girlfriend's. With men, he needs guns. He went after Cassie and stomped on her face. She wasn't allowed to go home to her mom. That is kidnapping. Eddie Garcia, he believed he could not go to the police under the agreement and the bribery. And Combs said, watch out how you spend it. This is a guy who can't get his own water bottle or plug his own phone charger. He's a general. He delegates. KK knows the Wild King Knights involved escorts. The only reason he needs thousands of dollars in those hotel rooms is to pay for the escorts. KK reads all of Combs' texts, so she knew. KK alone makes Diddy guilty on count 1, racketeering. Drugs, Mr. Agnifilo talked about a conspiracy to distribute, but giving drugs to Cassie and Jane is distribution. That is enough. Mr. Agnifilo claims they wanted it. Mia said no. Cassie said no on her 29th birthday. Jane said no before Anton after being beaten. These women had no reason to lie. The defense says it's for money, but Cassie already got paid. The defendant did hit Cassie during freak-offs. Cassie said it. Daniel Phillip, who was one of the escorts in the room, said it. He witnessed Cassie get and it's on video. The defendant was in that towel. The freak off was not over. There's no separating the violence from the sex. Remember when Cassie OD'd in a hotel room in Long Island and they still had the freak off? When Jane performed oral sex on Anton after Combs beat her, that was trafficking. He coerced Cassie and Jane into this, nothing happened. He raped Mia, nothing happened. He beat Cassie and nothing happened. He Cassie in hotel on tape and then bribed the guards to buy it and nothing happened. He was untouchable. He did not think that these women would speak and that Kid Cudi and Deontay Nash and the other men and the other 30 witnesses would speak. The defendant is not God. He stands equal before the law. Find him guilty. She did pretty good on that rebuttal. The rebuttal definitely brought it together, especially on Jane. I didn't even think the Jane thing would even have a chance, but the way she explained it brought it back for me, and I'm like, okay, I can see it. If you beat someone and then tell them to do the things that are sexual for you, even though you don't want to. All in all, not guilty on Jane, mistrial or guilty on Cassie, mistrial or guilty on RICO, and guilty on the sleeping with the prostitutes. All five?
Landslide.
Oh, landslide?
I'm just for the it.
I mean, listen, even if it is a hung jury, it's great because that means they can retry it, fix all their mistakes, and still take him to court. And he has to stay in jail.
But he's not going free.
No, he's definitely going to.
He's not. One thing for sure.
Yeah.
2 things for certain. He's not going home.
Yeah. I mean, again, though, it only takes one juror, so you never know. I know you guys might feel differently. It doesn't matter what I think or what Preach thinks. The 12 jurors is all that matters.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So we'll be watching the verdict. We'll see what happens with all this. And for anyone who says RICO's not supposed to be charged in this situation, just remember, R. Kelly was charged with RICO, found guilty. He used his employees for a lot of the shit that he was doing. So it applies also here. But yeah, at any rate, this will probably come out today. So yeah, anything else you want to say about Diddy? All right. Then we'll be back after the verdict. We'll see who's right. But we want to hear from you guys. Do you think you'll be guilty on all charges or just some?
Take that.
I feel like that joke got played out.
I don't care.
All right.
Take that.